If you are working or you have worked, you probably contributed to a company-sponsored retirement plan, right? Like a 401k. Well, but it's been 40 years since the 401k provision was written into law, and it is having some unintended consequences. Here to discuss what those are is our resident wealth strategist and tax attorney, Rebecca Walser. Good morning.
Good morning,
Welcome
Carly.
back.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
We've dived into this topic a little bit before, but I'm glad that we're revisiting this and talking about it a little bit more, because especially for my generation where we're going to talk about pensions, kind of what used to be.
Yep.
401ks is all we know.
That's right.
That companies are offering.
That's right. The do-it-yourself plan.
So you're pointing out some big flaws that people need to know of and be educated on.
That's right. There's really two fundamental cracks. And so for the baby boomers, they remember what it used to be. For our generation and on kind of the sandwich generation, Gen X, we only know what it has been. So if we bring up our first slide, we used to have, before 401k, 1974, a law. Our first slide basically shows that we used to have pensions, and that used to be the norm. Yeah. So boomers are used to pensions. Some people that are in boomers still have pensions, but that used to be the norm, and that's not where we are anymore. Now we went in 1974 to a pension is basically equated with security, Carly. You know, basically lifetime income can't be outlived. But then we had ERISA come along, and we moved to the do-it-yourself 401k plan. And there's really two fundamental problems with the way the 401k is designed. Okay. So let's talk about the first problem, which is really the volatility of the market. And really, since globalization and technology, we have had more volatility since the early 90s, mid 90s, than we used to ever see. So let's bring up this next chart where we can show the market. You can see back in the 80s, we had ups and downs, but they weren't like ginormous. Now, since the tech bubble of the 90s, we had a huge uprising and then a crash. Then we had the housing boom, I'll call it. It's really mortgage-backed security, Wall Street bond problem. But you look at that, and then we had a big crash. And now this only goes to December of 2015. We are actually now 250% higher on the S&P 500 since March 9th, 2009.
I feel like we're always being told, though, don't look at this. Don't look at it going up and down, you know, because you're getting it out later.
So that is what we call the buy and hold philosophy, which I agree with, probably for you and for me and for 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds that have a long investment horizon. We can withstand a crash because we will hold in the market long enough to get our money back and then move on. But for someone who's pre-retirement, mid-50s, has 10 years left, 10 working years left, we can't afford for them to have a 20% correction or greater and take 4 years of their 10 years left, 40% of their time left, just to get back to where they already were. Yeah. So depending on where you are in your life cycle, investment strategies must change. The second problem really with the 401k, of course, is taxes. We are saving money in this country in the largest tax bucket that we have, which is ordinary income tax. And we don't have a chart, but I have a little showing here that since 1915 through 2014, our top average marginal rate was 61%. Right now we're at 39.6 unless Trump gets his tax plan through, and then we'll be at 35. So we right now are in the second lowest taxation period in the history of our country. Why do people not pay the tax now and then retire 20 years from now and pay the tax in 2037? Can you imagine the tax in 2037 when all of the boomers are retired? And we have $20 trillion of debt. So what made sense when the 401k was born in the early 70s and really rolled out in the 80s, what made sense back then when we didn't have this huge debt doesn't necessarily make sense in 2017 when the boomers are retiring en masse and we have a huge $20 trillion debt bill.
Well, and I love while you're here, this is what you do. It's educating people, and this is what needs to happen. People need to look at kind of the bigger picture.
They need to look long-term down the road.
We can't wait for other people to make other decisions. You have to do something about it.
The 401k is a retirement plan. What you have to look at is how is it going to perform in retirement. There are alternatives. There are viable alternatives that absolutely make sense to do now in 2017.
And if you want to know what those are, Rebecca's certainly the person to call. And again, we love that you're here helping, educating everybody. You can do, if you have any more questions, I'm sure you do, there is the number to call. Great website as well. Rebecca, again, we always love when you're here. We look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.